Hello, everyone. I am going to do a quick overview of abstracting and highlight some points that have seemed to be problematic for people abstracting the case. So, when you put in data and you put in unknown data, it has to match the number of digits in the data item. And then you're going to put in a last name and a first name for your patient. This should be a mixed case. It's mandatory that there be a phone number for the case. So if it's unknown, then it needs to be specified as unknown. Your address has to be in all caps. So whatever your address is, it should be in all caps. And you're going to just use the same address and assign the same, uh, just assign a different, you're going to assign a different um, apartment number for each case. So same address, different apartment number for each case. Uh, and then you're going to put in the country. So you can use the drop down menus. Remember that when you're doing date of birth, in all of these cases, your date of birth can be 01, anything in the first week of January, but your year has to use 2018, and you have to count the year based on when the patient was diagnosed. So if the patient was diagnosed and you're looking to for the patient to be 49 years of age, then your year of birth has to be based on the patient being 49 years of age at that time. Now, when you're looking for the birth country and the birth sex and the birth state, that is information captured from your case. So you actually look in in your particular case and you look for that information. So I base my year based on the patient being 49 in 2018. And so they in 2020 they'd be 51 years old. So if you're going to count back from 2020, you need to add 2 years to the age when you do your calculation. So the patient is born in California, so I know what my state is, and I see they have PPO insurance. So the birth country, of course, is going to be the United States. It was California, so I'm just going to scroll down on the menu and select California. Sex of my patient was a female. Now, the race code said she was Asian. When you're documenting, you actually need to go in and look in the store manual and look at all the details in the codes be, until you know what they are. So if I'm putting 88 in these fields because I know that's what it is, because my coding instructions told me that if there's no further races documented, I should code 88. You should never be coding unknown when you have information. If you have information, any information about the race, whether it's where the patient was born at or the patient's race is specified, then you should not be putting unknowns in the fields. The patient is Asian, so I think it's a reasonable assumption that the patient is non-Hispanic. I do not know the patient's, this particular patient's, I've already reviewed my record, and I know that none of this data is listed. If you do not know the patient's uh, occupation or industry, then you type unknown. There's very few fields in our database that require you and have you put in uh, leave a field blank. So just about every data field is going to be completed. There are few data fields that are left blank. So we know we're going to be doing an abstract. So I should have A here. We know my case is incomplete. We know that this particular case is a breast case. So that's site code 50. I know that's site code 50, but if you don't know what the site code is, then it just simply means you have to look it up. And if you put an asterisk and that in breast and then search it, it's going to give you the code of 50. Your sequence number is based on how many cancers the patient has. If you look through your record, there's no mention, and usually I'm going to find my information whether or not the patient has prior cancer in the history and physical exam. So that's where I'm going to generally find that information. And that information is not here. So based on that, I know I don't have any information saying the patient has any other cancers. So the sequence is going to be 00, representing that the patient has one and only one cancer. Our hospital is Santa Barbara City College. That's our hospital. And it's hospital number 01. I already know that. Your class of case is based on your patient's relationship to where they were diagnosed and where they were treated. If I look at my particular patient, I'm looking for information as far as the patient being diagnosed. And so when I look into the body of my first exam text, there's nothing in here that's diagnostic of the cancer. I next will check my scans. This scan is significantly before my patient was diagnosed. And if I look here, there's nothing really in this scan that really says that my patient is not diagnostic of the cancer, because this is after the procedure has been done already. So based on the information here, it says that this was an atypical papilloma, which is non-diagnostic, it's not a cancer. And they say that they're going to do a wire localization. So this is where I should be looking for my diagnosis of cancer. So if I go down here and look for that procedure, it was done on 2/6, and it was the left breast mass. It was an excisional biopsy, and it identified invasive ductal carcinoma. Herein lies your diagnosis date. So now I have my diagnosis date. Okay. So, but we were looking for classic case. Okay, classic case. And so since the patient was diagnosed at my facility, and that was actually the treatment for the cancer, it means that the patient was diagnosed at my facility. They were treated at my facility. And if I look in the case for the other treatment, I think they had hormone therapy, and that was also done at my facility. Again, I'm Santa Barbara. We're Santa Barbara City College Hospital. We're the reporting facility. So, patient diagnosed at my facility. All their treatment was at my facility. So now I can select my class of case. I know that any cases that were diagnosed at my facility is going to be in the range of 00 to 14 for analytic cases. I know that any cases diagnosed elsewhere is going to be in the range for 20 to 22 for places diagnosed elsewhere, and then some part of the treatment was done at our facility or all of it. So based on that, I'm going to select classic case 14 because the patient was diagnosed at our facility and all the treatment was done at our facility. We already talked about the diagnosis date because we identified the first date that indicates the patient had cancer. Now, when we're putting in the accession number, you only ever, all you ever put in is the year. You put in the year, you hit the tab key, and the system generates the number. Okay, so all you're ever putting in is the year that you're entering the case into your registry. Now, if this patient was, say, born in Japan, or I had a different sequence number other than 00, I would put a comment here to explain that. And so once I've completed that information, I'm going to save here. This is the patient maintenance screen. If I had any doubt about what any of these fields meant, I just click the little question mark here, and it explains what that data field is for. So throughout this software, wherever you have a question about something, you just hit the question mark and it will give you an explanation. It may not give you the details you need to code the item, but it at least will let you know what the item it is and where you need to go. Now, the address on the first part of the screen, the address on the first screen is the patient's address, current address. The address on the second screen is the patient's diagnosis address. If they're the same, you just hit the tab key and the system will put that information in for you. The secondary diagnosis code cannot be blank. So if the patient doesn't have any secondary diagnosis codes listed, then you're putting in 7 zeros according to the coding instructions. First contact date. We already talked about that. The first contact date is either the date the patient was diagnosed with the cancer or the date the cancer was treated. So it's the first of either of those dates that occurred at your facility. So we at our facility diagnosed the patient with the cancer. So since we diagnosed him, the first contact date is going to, in this case, be the same as the diagnosis date. Your admit date and your discharge date represents the most definitive surgical procedure that occurred for that patient. If there's not a definitive surgical procedure, then that usually represents some treatment. Now, diagnostic confirmation, you see I did not have to put in a session year. It picked that up from the accession number that I've already put in. The accession year is usually automatically populated when it is the first case entered in your registry. If it's not the first case entered in your registry, and this is the second tumor for this patient, the second cancer for this patient, then you would need to specify the accession year because it cannot pull it from the accession number because it don't know, especially if it's a different year, because your accession number is never going to change. It's going to always be the same. You differentiate the patient and additional cancer that happens in later years by the accession year. So if I had a new cancer, this patient had a new cancer in 2020, then the accession year would show 2020, but the accession number stays the same. And when you go to enter the patient in your registry, the system will look at a medical record number. And so you put your medical record number in first. It'll look at that if you have a patient that's in your system already, and it will pick up that to help identify the accession number. Now, diagnostic confirmation is how the tumor was confirmed. I'm clicking positive histology because we did surgery on this patient. I know the patient has histology. And histology, if you read the coding instruction, it says code 1 takes precedence over all the other codes. So for solid tumors, you should rarely have anything other than 1. It's very rare. It occurs, but rare. So marital status, I do believe our patient was single. Yes, our patient is single. So for marital status, we're going to put in select single off our menu. Topography code relates to the exact location of the tumor. So our patient's tumor is located left lateral breast at 2 o'clock. So if it's the left breast at 2 o'clock, it means that the left breast at 2 o'clock is in the upper outer quadrant. And so when I go here to look on my list, if I haven't looked it up in my ICDO book, then I'm going to go here and I'm going to look for the breast again, and I'm going to look for the upper outer quadrant because that's the location of my breast based on that description. 2 o'clock makes it the upper outer quadrant. It said it was in my left breast, so the laterality code is left. It's the origin of my primary. Histology. So for my histology, I go here and I look on my path report, and it says I have an invasive ductal carcinoma. That's my histology. This is my text for my histology, invasive ductal carcinoma. And I would capture this date for where I selected that from when I do my text. So for my histology code, I know that that is 8,500. And because it was an invasive tumor, it's 8,500. And 3 is the behavior code. My primary payer was a PPO, case finding source. I looked at my pathology report. That's how I identified I was going to insert this case into my registry. My reporting source, I'm the hospital, we're the hospital. So the hospital is who's reporting this case. And that's what I'm selecting. You don't fill in any areas that are grayed out or that say user. Now, I know I had surgery. There was surgery done for my patient. So I'm going to select a surgeon off my list here. And I'm going to select Adam Ant. That was my general surgeon. Now, my patient also, you always have to identify a following physician and a managing physician. If the patient is getting systemic therapy, then their following and managing physician is usually a med-onc. And so this patient is getting anastrozole, which is a systemic hormonal therapy. So I'm going to select a med-onc. And in your actual record, you will have your physician's names down and you would know automatically who those are. And so my following physician will be the same. Oops, wrong one. I selected the hematologist, oncologist, and this would also be my med-onc. Now, if I also had the patient, if by chance the patient had rad-onc, I would also use that. Now, I'm going to save this. And so now I've completed my second screen with the exception of the text. So first thing I have to identify my primary site text. So I go back into my medical record and I'm going to identify where this tumor is located. We already said where the tumor was located. Left lateral breast is where this tumor is located. So there's a couple of places you can pick any item where it identifies. Usually I don't pick a date of something that's prior to my diagnosis date. So for my primary site, I'm going to go and I'm going to pick my MRI on 219 to identify where my primary site. So if I choose this, I just need the left breast. I'm going to copy this and do 219, but my primary site's text is going to be left breast, and all I need is the left breast. I don't have to write the excision or biopsy. Left breast at 2 o'clock. The left breast the first part of my primary site code is the 50, is breast. The left tells it that it's on the left side. That covers my laterality code for my tumor. And the 2 o'clock tells me that it's in the upper outer quadrant because it's on the left breast. Now, for my histology text, remember we talked about where we go and find our histology. Your histology is most often in your path report. I have invasive ductal carcinoma. That's my text for my histology. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put my date of where I identified my information. There's my histology. Place diagnosis text. Our patient was diagnosed on 2/06, 2018, and we were at Santa Barbara City College. There's my diagnosis. Now my exam text. Now this is a little tricky here because the exam text, if I had did this case already, I would have probably just this information, these two, if I did the case early. So we're not going to put the discharge information, but this is my exam text. And so I'm going to copy this information and then I'm going to shorten it because I don't uh, need all of this. And actually, um, I'm probably going to just use this portion here. This is a second visit, and so I'm not using that. This is actually after my first primary treatment has occurred, and I'm essentially just copying all the information. But when I copy information, you see I look down here to see my text field. So I have exceeded my limit. So now I'm going to go out here and I'm going to take out information that's not needed. Now, all of this occurred before the patient came to my facility. So I'm going to take this line out as the first thing. And so we don't need this. We don't need this label chief complaint because we're going to assume that that's the chief complaint. And so we got less lateral Brasier, approximately 60 centimeter tornado biopsy. And we don't really need that history either. We can go with show papilloma with atypical only excision recommended. Recommend is REC. Abbreviated stands for recommend. And if you're wondering about abbreviations, you can always go to the NACER Data Dictionary on that page. This is your recommended abbreviations. And you can look at words you can use to abbreviate. And I look down here to find recommend. And that's why I abbreviated it in that way. And so I don't abbreviate unless I have to. So based on what I see down there, I know I just need to cut out 11 letters. And I know that anterior is done with A and T, and I need like 11 letters. So I'm going to take the anterior margin out here, and we're just going to do ANT for anterior. And I just need to bilateral. If we look on our dictionary thing here for bilateral, we'll see that you can do bilateral as B/L, or bilateral can be BIL. So I'm going to change where it says bilateral at to BIL, and that will help me further condense what I have here. And let me find my word bilateral. And you can always, so there was also, we don't need that. You can just take out that, and then it was at least 1 centimeter, whatever. And there we have it, our text is within the limit. Okay, so this is, and then we save. And now we are essentially done with this case. I see the last 3 digits of my session number is 392. I'm remembering that because I'm gonna exit out of here and show you how to enter back in. So I did my case. If this, when you have saved everything, your save button is not highlighted. If you change anything in your text, it's gonna provide you with your save button again. So if at any time you see your save button highlighted, you know you need to hit save. Again, if you forget what goes in a field, you just hit your little question mark up here and it gives you an idea of what goes in that field. So I have saved my information and I've entered what I'm going to enter for now. And so this point, so when you do your next assignment, you should already have all of this in. And so when it tells you to do the next text field, you do it. If you're starting a new case and you're putting in a particular text and the text is the assignment, you still need to do everything to that point. So all these data fields need to be filled in. Again, I said the admitted and the discharge date is for the most definitive surgical procedure. So let me go see what did my patient have any other surgical procedure. 3/7, they had a breast biopsy, and that looks like on 7/9, they had a sentinel node and a mastectomy. This is the most extensive procedure right here. And so I would be looking for a discharge date for that. So we know that the 7/9, the mastectomy is more extensive than the incisional biopsy and the other procedures listed here. So my discharge date is going to be whatever it said up here from that procedure, which I think is the 10th. And the surgery was done on the 9th, I do believe. So for my admit date, it would be the 07 because your admit date and discharge date represents your most definitive surgical procedure. And so then I'll say that. So now my record is completed up to this point, and I'm going to exit. As long as these buttons are still highlighted, you can go back into the case from here. I'm on the staging field, so that's not where I want to be. I want to go back to my diagnosis field where my text is. And so this is the diagnosis maintenance screen. You should pay attention to what screen you're on. So when you start to get further along into the process and it's telling you to look for edit, you have an edit somewhere. For instance, if they said you had an edit in the phone number, you know your phone number is on your first page. Okay, and so you exit out of here. Now, if I had completely exit out of here, there's a couple of ways I can look back up my case. And I remember that my accession number was 392. So I'm just going to make this 392 and I can search again for my case. And there's my case, and I just select here and go back into my case. Okay, so don't forget the only thing. And then once I've completed, this is the identical same system that's used in the hospital. There is no different than the system used in the hospital. It's the identical. So when the system goes down in the hospitals, ours go down. So when we had the issues this past weekend, they were doing upgrades and we were having all the issues with our system. So was the hospitals. The hospitals were having the same issues because this is the identical same system used in the hospital. Okay, when you're finished, because this is the identical same system, you always have to log out when you're done. And routinely, you do not save your codes when you're in medical records or anything that has patient-sensitive information in it. Okay, so I just wanted to do this overview. So hopefully you are clear what you go in your cases. I'm just going to make one mention about the store manual. Everything that we're coding is in the store manual. So if you peruse the index of the store manual, so when I say go to the coding instructions, the majority of your coding instructions are in the store manual. You see there's sequence number, and all of these are hyperlinks so that you can hyperlink to whatever item you're looking for. And there's a way to put a return button up there. I have to go find that again. But I usually will go from my index and look, or either just do a search for the items I'm looking at. And you see, it tells you everything, how to code the race, specific instructions about the race, your comorbidity codes, how you do the physician, the date of first contact and what that means, the histology, the laterality code. So everything that you're coding, there's an instruction for it. And there's a way to do it, and you need to read the instructions because the instruction tells you what the code means. Okay, and it may not always mean what you think literally it should mean. Okay, so I want you to all to have a good evening and happy abstracting. If I annotated on your assignment that you needed to correct something, please correct it and annotate when it's done. Okay. Have a good day.